So, Feeny, can you tell us when you first heard about the Peace Camp?
Yeah, I was at Michigan Women's Festival, my first time there, digging trenches for laying pipe for plumbing. And then I ran into Mauve and Mayor and ARF girls and no, Arcaritas wasn't there at that time. They came later. But met Samoa and C. Ray and everybody there, and then heard about, and the women from, there were some women from England there at the time. And then we went on to Newmer, and I guess that was when I put up the Adopt the Dyke sign. Okay, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know where I'm going. I didn't have a vehicle at the time, and so I just made a sign. I knew the Peace Camp girls were getting ready to leave, and so I made a sign, Adopt the Dyke. And they said, okay. And Samoa threw my gear in the back of the truck, and I got in the car with a young woman named Natalie, and we drove to the Peace Camp. And my first assignment at the Peace Camp the next day after settling in was me and another woman. Our job was to go to the backside of the airport, going into the woods and photographing them loading the planes. And we were told, of course, you could be shot for treason. So it's like, okay, I'm in. So we went, and the woman's name, I can't remember her name, but I remember she lived either at ARF or one of the lands out west, and she was a clown. She could do Emmett Kelly like really good. I remember. And we did good. The helicopters, we got back there, and lucky enough, Woody Blue dropped us off, of course, and said she would meet us back at this place. And we went in the woods and found the plane being loaded and started taking pictures of it. And it wasn't too long after that the helicopters were over us. And so then we decided to separate the film from the camera, so if one of us got arrested, at least we could hide the film or something would happen with the film, and they couldn't really get us for treason if there was no film. Well, maybe they could, but they weren't going to get the damn film, let's put it that way. We were going to complete our mission. So they start chasing us with the helicopter, and we were new, just got there the day before, so we didn't know where anything was at. They chased us out of the woods, and we ran up behind some farmhouse and a road totally away from where we were to be picked up. And we were like, what are we going to do now? And sure enough, there was Woody Blue sitting there with some new women that had come in, and she picked us up, and we were like, how did you know where we were? She said, I followed the helicopters. And so we were glad. It's a little scary and exhilarating all at the same time when you're doing that kind of work. You want to complete your mission. You don't want to really get caught back there, because that was big time if you get caught back there photographing airplanes. And I had injured my eye a little bit that day, so I had to wear an eye patch for a couple of days because I ran into a stick on my way out. Leave it to me. So we went back to the camp. I don't know how long we were out there. It seemed like we were out there quite a few hours. We believed that they were loading arms to send to Nicaragua. We figured they were probably some of the cruise and Pershing missiles that they were shipping out of there. The political work that they were doing, the fact that so many women were coming through from all over the world, and you know, I needed to get out of Virginia and do some experiencing life differently. I had been doing Newmer Festival for a couple of years, I think, and then finally a woman named Alice, who was a plumber there, got me a gig, a paid gig. And then I went to work at Oasis. We created Oasis for women to have safe space, because the year before, I guess, a woman from Boston got committed, and so they didn't want that to happen again, so Oasis was created. It was safe space for women to go and flip out, because when you got that many women around and that much energy and things, some women have a tendency to need quiet space or safe space to go through what they need to go through. And so I went from digging trenches to coordinator, paid coordinator. I don't think I did get paid for digging the trenches. But I did get paid. Nita got me, I think, $250 to work at Oasis and be a radical there. She needed another radical to help her out. I'd heard Estelle was living in a teepee at the time in the back, and that women were living in something called benders, and I wanted to see what benders were too. They were great little homes made out of saplings.
Plastic
right.
saplings.
Exactly. They did good. When I got there, I guess it was about, I was trying to remember today, it was the summer of '84, fall of '85, whenever I came in there, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And then we did Michigan, Newmer, and Northwoods. And that was where Phenix Cafe started. All the Peace Camp girls needed rest and whatever. I don't remember if it was the first year or second year of Northwoods that it was created, because we needed to take over a smokers partying slut space, and we took over the upstairs and called it Phenix Cafe. Wild thing, wild women going on, let me tell you. That was another reason to hang out, all the great wild women. I'd heard about, I guess the first '83 or something, when over 10,000 women came through the Peace Camp and was doing all this great work. I love the stories of hearing about the women climbing the fences and doing stuff, and I wanted to be a part of, learn some new skills. You know, part of my being a warrior. I guess went over I got a ban and bar letter. Finally went over to get arrested, I guess, to collect your ban and bar letters. It was great. We had heard stories about you had to be careful at some places where you went over the fence because some of the women had loosened some of the top barbed wire things. That's how Brenda broke her leg when we went over in 1990, I guess it was then. Karen Otter and her girlfriend. There were 5 of us there that day. We were bored. Oh, the pumpkin story. I got to tell you the pumpkin story. Z was on land at the time, and we were bored out of our minds. Didn't know. We'd been zapped so much till we didn't know which end was up. And we decided, there was an old pumpkin around, and we decided to take that pumpkin and carry it back to the fence and set it next to the fence and see what the security would do. So it must have been cold. It was definitely after October, I'm assuming, because I remember us being bundled up pretty warm. So we took the pumpkin and set it back by the fence, and then we hid in the woods to wait and see what the security was going to do. And eventually they showed up looking at that pumpkin. They took some kind of long metal thing and run it through the fence, checking the pumpkin out. We were in the woods. We were laughing so hard we thought we were going to pee our pants, laughing at the boys running around. They were running around like that. You'd have thought that was a bomb sitting at that fence instead of a dried up little pumpkin. It's probably about that big around, but we had the best time watching this guy run around, getting on his radio and calling them, and it did break the boredom that day for sure, because right then things were a little slow. People weren't going over the fence as much then, and so you had to figure out ways to aggravate them still in our book. Well, that's the, how do you say it? ELF, electromagnetic low frequency. We used to wake up half your body sunburned, caused all kind of problems. At that point we were telling women, childbearing women, to not come on land, or kids couldn't come on land as much anymore. A lot of women stopped, I think, coming because of the zapping was so intense. And they were, Woody Blue was still around, that I remember. And we started using, sleeping under space blankets to see if that would make a difference. And then we would set up copper piping out in the yard with crystals on it to see if we could deflect the zapping somehow like that. Yeah, I think the space blankets would definitely work. We actually started taping them up on the windows upstairs. Oh yeah, you could definitely tell when they were zapping. By a lightheadedness or a feeling that would go on. It's like you become so sensitive to it till even when you left the Peace Camp, if you drove near any satellite dishes or anything, you could feel those magnetic fields for sure. I believe a lot of the women that were at the Peace Camp during the heaviest part of the zappings, a lot of us have health problems now, and I think they're related from when they mutated our cells and stuff like that. Because I'm hearing a lot of women are having arthritis problems, and I believe it's more than just, or MS. You know, I think it's definitely related. Yeah, there was a lot of women there. I can't remember their name, but they were women. I think they lived in Ohio or something. 2 women. They ended up having to leave their home because the zapping was so bad. Because there was nothing to be followed by black vehicles or black helicopters showing up out of the clear blue in places. My phone became tapped. We knew that with my hanging out. And everywhere I went, I had to let people know that it was possible that their phone could be tapped or something could happen. Somebody has to do the work, you know. Was my life's work, to be political activist, radical, and could do it. Didn't have kids, didn't have to worry about kids, didn't have to worry about anything other than myself. And so I put my life on the line for a lot of causes, and that was one of them. There was never any doubt in my mind about that the U.S. government would do anything to like kill people or the peace camp. We went through a lot, from throwing rocks. I remember the guy wanted to make the pot bomb to kill Estelle in the bus. And the sheriff happened to be at the local bar and heard him talking about it. And then they caught him coming out of the gate with all the materials in the back of his trunk and arrested him. Yeah, I guess it would have been between 87 and 90. Yeah, there was Z, I think, was there, and the 2 young women. I just remember the sheriff coming to the house and meeting with Estelle to tell Estelle that there was a guy mouthing off at the bar, and the sheriff happened to be there having a beer, and he heard this guy talking about making a bomb to blow up them bitches. He was definitely going to get that school bus. It was the military guy. I think he was a staff sergeant at the time, but yeah, I vaguely remember he was some kind of sergeant, I think, or something. But I time they got him, I think he probably wasn't a sergeant very long. And then they caught him coming up through the military gate and searched his car and found all this stolen. It was a pretty scary time. There wasn't a lot going on. We were on occasion we were going about the airfield, and we were always putting carpet on the fence, and then call them a couple hours later and say, "Do y'all have those women that went over the fence? We're looking for them." And then they would go over there and see the carpet there and think women went over the fence, and we'd be sitting on the other side laughing at them because nobody had went over. Yeah, I was a bit nervous at the beginning. I know the military can really, they're like the cops. They can cause you to disappear. So I forget who got arrested with me. I don't remember who was with me. We were doing Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We're the anniversary of that, and there was a bunch of us that went over, Quakers that were in town, and we went in through the front gate. We went over the front gate part, I think, just to get arrested. If I remember correctly, it was one time. No, that wasn't my first one. The first one was at the back gate. Just after, they still had the frickin' lights going, and we were trying to find places to go over. And I went over, they got me, took us, I saw the cattle pens where they kept the women, but they didn't put us in them, they put us in this room, and I remember, and then gave us the letter and sent us on our way. Maybe 4 or 5 of us at the most. I don't even remember who was there. I think Z might have been there, and I know Woody Blue was around, but I don't remember if she went over, she was still just driving everybody around. But I remember about the lights being on all the time and the generator running, and the women decided they were going to knock the lights out. So they got in a circle and did a ceremony around the fire to go over, and all of a sudden one of the women said, "Listen," and another woman said, "I don't hear anything," and we went, "Yeah." The generators had went out and nobody had to go over the fence, and they never got them working again. They used to wake us up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning with the ground rumbling, and that was, I'm sure that was when they were shipping the missiles in the underground railroad thing they had there, and you could feel it. it was an assumption from talking to some other people that I knew that that was how they had to move the missiles from one end to the other. And the way the ground was, well, when the Cold War ended and they got the DS-2 back from Germany, DS-2 is a chemical name about that long, and that's what they used to decontaminate aircraft with. And Germany said, okay, the Cold War is over, take the DS-2 back. And so the US had to get all the DS-2 back, and they stored it in those underground tunnels in 55-gallon drums that actually rust and leak out. We had our finger on the pulse of everything. There was always somebody that was willing to give us information. They may not say who they were or anything like that, but there was a lot of women that just had great skills for this kind of work, you know, and putting their life on the line. I'd heard about the women that, I guess they were from England, that went over, and they were really good about not getting caught. And they would put bumper stickers under the vehicles, under colonels and generals' vehicles, and then when they would go get their oil changes or whatever, they'd find all these bumper stickers. I guess they didn't have a band and bar letter yet, and I'm watching Broadwing Hawk migrate. They hadn't got their band and bar letter yet, and so they finally walked up behind the MPs and said, hey, here we are. And the MP had been back there for like 4 days. Nobody had seen or heard from him for 4 days. The women stayed back there just living off however they were living and doing what they needed to do. So when they came back, they was able to tell us where different things were that we didn't know, and there was a map drawn of where things were hidden and what was going on. I loved the white deer that lived back there. I'll never forget that. They're actually, they're not an albino. There's an actual strain of white deer that I learned since from taking classes. And Estelle and I were doing driving around one early foggy morning, and there was a white stag came up like out of the mists of Avalon, and we were looking at it, and I turned to look at Estelle. Did you see that? It had like 14 points on it, you know, and we looked at each other and turned around and it was gone just that quick. Then we heard about some white frogs. Never saw them, but I did see the white deer, which we have them here in Virginia also. Yeah. Some of them were a strain of, like the deer is definitely a strain of deer. It's not anything, you know, caused by the nuclear stuff there or anything like that. A little bit. Got around there a little bit before they could catch up with me. I guess about the last time I was arrested must have been in 1990 when me and Brenda Baker went over the fence and Brenda broke her leg. That was, they were getting ready to do this drill where they had the injured people, I forget what they call it, and we went over. I guess Otter was there, and her girlfriend, and Elliot, Otter and Elliot, and Brenda and me, and there was one other person, but I can't remember who it was because I remember there were 5 of us. And the reporters were there, and we went to over at a gate I'd never been to before on the east side, and then we went in and started over the fence. We had a bunch of flyers we were distributing around, basically letting them know what chemicals or what things were stored there if they did have an accident. We were giving them, they were pretending there was an accident over some shit that wasn't even there, and we were letting everybody know what was there, the DS-2 that was being, you know, things, different things that were coming in. And I guess there was another woman that I can't remember her name. She had a 280Z. She was in a wheelchair on occasion. Big woman, sort of. I think somebody later said she might have been a transvestite, but I don't remember. I knew that would make you remember. She was radical. She was really good driver. Her and I used to, and by that point I had learned how to identify 18-wheelers carrying cruise and Pershing missiles. They have a distinct little mark on there with a number that we were all taught how to recognize. And so me and her were good about, we were bored, there wasn't a lot going on still, so her and I, we used to drive around the fence, and the the guys would follow us. We'd pull up to the gate like we were going to go in or something, just to get them going. And she could drive like 40 miles an hour backwards, you know, and do like these 280 turns or 320, whatever you call them, 360 turns. And she was really good. She used to scare me once in a while, but I trusted her pretty good. She was a good driver. And these security guys would just follow us down the road like crazy. Like we'd laugh like crazy at them. We'd be just driving down the road and they'd be down on their side trying to keep up with us. And we'd do a flip and turn around, and they'd have to do their 3-point turn, catch up with us. We'd go down and park at the gate and wait for them. We've stopped a few of them when they were coming outside the base. You would see them whenever they were getting ready to leave. It was nothing. That was how we were trained to recognize them, because we knew John Q. Public didn't know that they were shipping these weapons in an 18-wheeler that if it had a wreck could cause problems, because they had, you know, things in there that could harm other people. So we tried to slow them up or agitate them as much as possible, stop them for a while. We held one truck back for 2.5 hours, that we know, because they kept waiting for us to leave, and we had brought a lunch, so we weren't going nowhere. We just sat around and tormented them, what we did best. As long as we were outside the fence, there wasn't nothing they could do to us. You know, when they come out, we'd follow them. We'd do it like we were radioing and doing all this stuff. And they never knew if there were other cars around, which there wasn't. There was only me and her at that time. Once in a while, Z might be in her truck and would be at another end, and we would radio them and let them know what was going on. So when you get bored, you'd be surprised what you'll do. Yeah, when we were doing the transform or die stuff, there was a lot of us that wanted to do more radical work, and there was debate about whether to do it or not, and you know, not to make, I don't know, it just had calmed down a lot. But we still, those of us that lived there still did a lot of things. We just didn't tell everybody about it. We lived there, nobody else was there. What's her name? That had a problem with her eyes, the elder lady that, Cindy Sandy. She's a great lady, love her to death. But we sometimes did not see eye to eye on some things. Well, it was usually a lot about who lives on land and who don't live on land, was what I remember a lot. And who puts money in and who don't put money in. You know, that's why I talk about a lot of classism things and working out, you know, and we were freeloaders. But we did a lot of work there, I think, more than freeloading. But that happens, I think, with any organization. You're always going to have people that are on opposite sides of the fence, even though they're on the same side.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that was around class issues, for sure, which, you know, sometimes was talked about and sometimes wasn't talked about. I think there could have been a little more talking about things, or some of the actually calling it class issues and dealing with it, which I learned later on in doing different things. But everything always worked out. You know, we always got along with each other. We always managed to get the work done. You know, and I felt that was what was important, was getting the work done, getting the word out. Yeah, there were a lot of light-skinned women of color that came onto the land that some of us felt like that were not recognized as women of color because they had light skin. And there was issues brought up about that. You know, some people didn't want to recognize Samoa as being a woman of color, light-skinned woman of color. But she's Samoan, that's why she's 6'7". So, and then myself, nobody ever challenged me much because I was so strong about my heritage and who I am, and politically about it, and empowered other women to claim it, like Estelle, who was told she has Abenaki blood by the tribal judge because she found the family name from when you lived on Abenaki farm, which I remember. I guess I can't remember all the different women that came through. But when I came through, there was, at the time, predominantly white women there, and that was okay. You know, Woody Blue, she's my hero, I love you, Woody Blue! She taught me a lot, you know, about, empowering myself and how to deal with going over the fence and stuff. She's very skilled about those things and very in tune with, if she said she was going to be somewhere to pick you up, she was there, and if she didn't find you there, she would find you. She never left anyone hanging. None of the women ever did that I ever remember. If we knew women were arrested and over that fence, then we were keeping up with them. There were stories going around at night when some of the women would go back by the fence. There were the guys in black that would jump and grab the women and scare the bejeebies out of them, and they were military that were doing covert on our side of on our land, that were grabbing women and scaring the bejeebies out of them. We had women from Canada that came and stayed for a few months, and a lot of women that didn't really have a home. I was homeless for 7 years, on and off the peace camp, on and off here and there. I claimed the peace camp is where I lived a lot because I was there, but I had nowhere else I was going. I eventually had a vehicle. I think I got a little truck somewhere down the line. Yeah, a woman from Canada that came in, Donna, she didn't really have anywhere else to go. And there was a few other women that came through. They just sort of traveled around, living wherever. Yeah. And I guess they had heard the stories and thought, okay, this is a place I can fit in. And it was great until maybe sometimes when it got a little stressful, if somebody was too way out there and they needed more help than we could offer. And we screamed and hollered and cussed each other out and everything else, in the name of love. But we did. There was a lot of high emotion women there, and everybody has their own way of speaking, but it worked out. No, I think we were still doing consensus then. But the women that lived on land had majority rule. I guess Otter and Elliot and all them, Cindy Sangria and them would come in to have the meetings about what's going to happen with the land, and that was the main thing, was what was going to happen with the land towards 1990. I guess after that, then it was, now what do we do? And that's when the transformer die signs went out front, because it was going through the transformation. We were living there. It was my first experience with real lake effect snows. It could be pretty intense. I wasn't quite used to all that cold yet. So we had to make sure there was always firewood, always keeping the chimney clean, making sure that a lot of women that came through did not know how to use wood stoves. And that was the biggest fear, was that somebody was going to burn the house down, blazing the fire up too much. So there was a thermometer on the stovepipe, and everybody was taught to keep it under a certain temperature, and that seemed to work. Yeah. I remember me and Merry Christmas driving once up the highway trying to get back to the peace camp, and it snowed so we couldn't even see the exit. We weren't sure we were going to make it back, but we did. We made it back. She was a good driver. I think at one point I even got out in front of the car walking because we couldn't even find the roads. I think we used to go visit Aurora when she was living in Albany at the time, and Michelle Crone was out, I guess, in Albany. I think some of the other girls took care of them. I guess Cindy Sangria and them did the bills. I don't really remember that part of it. Isn't that funny? And there wasn't as many donations coming in then that I remember, that I knew about. Now, whether they went to anybody else's house outside of the peace camp, I don't remember. And I think those of us that lived there, we did the best we could with trying to help out with things or whatever. I don't really remember ever giving Cindy any money. The bills always got paid one way or another, and the work went on. I know it was stressful for everybody maybe in a lot of ways, but the work still needed to be done. Oh right, the Mohawks. That's right. Yeah, we were collecting food and medical supplies. We had managed to connect. Somebody had a connection with a doctor And I remember talking to them about getting medical supplies in. And somebody else had a connection to a Vietnam vet that could fly a helicopter in. So they used, because they were stopping everybody from going in, the Mohawks were bunkered in. I think it was when the Pines, they were wanting to build on the land. And they were stopping them from doing it. So they hunkered in for over 30 days, I believe, or more. And they were shooting at them like they always do. I think they call them SQ up there, which are like military police, but they're not really. And so we managed to like organize clothes, food, and medical supplies. They needed medicines. There was apparently a diabetic back there that needed insulin, and so we found the people that could make it happen. And then somebody from that group came by and picked the supplies up and drove them in. And they were able to get through. And they hid a lot of this stuff in their cars to be able to get through there. A lot of people were being beaten up and things. So that was our helping out other parts of the community times. Started, Daisy Goodman came through and her and I got tied up. And then I guess I went to Virginia for a while, and then we went to Vermont and met with the Abenaki. And so then I was back and forth a little bit, but I think Z had already left. Most of us had nothing really going on at the camp. They pretty much were shutting it down. I don't remember any concrete decisions being made. I guess some of us just, our work started taking us in different places more than anything. I think I'd come back, Estelle would be there on occasion doing her gardening and yard work. We'd hang out and party for a while. When I'd go see Aurora, and usually me and Aurora would usually go over and have to sit in the school bus and reminisce. That was then connected with Spinsters Opposed to Nuclear Genocide, and ended up in New Haven a lot at T's house, T and Alessandro's place. And from there, learning to do spinster stuff. We did demonstrations in DC. They all came to Virginia. We all got arrested and was in jail for a couple of days. Alessandra, they kept her for a week. She got to wear the little orange uniform that all people in DC wear. DC has the only underground political prison. T and I, T, who's a bearded lady, agitated a black male sheriff because we wouldn't jump back against the wall quick enough. And so he decided he was going to drag us away. And we go underground with the buses running, and there's Estelle sitting in the bus there gasping for air because they had been running the diesel buses forever. And we were like, hey, the sheriff's taking us somewhere. And so we would let people know where we're at. But this other woman, she came and she got us away from him. She said that you don't want to go with him, he would have hurt you. Another woman sheriff, I think, so. But I latched on to T and wouldn't let her go, and he says, fine, if you're going with us then. I said, well, that was the idea, because he wasn't going to take her by herself. They weren't going to leave me in there by myself. I think that was that against Bork going into Supreme Court and stuff? I believe it was. They had a lot of AIDS people there because we had some on our bus, and when they were supposed to take their medicine, the cops like dropped it on the ground and made them get down and lick it up. And I remember that. So there was a lot of lawsuits. There was a book made out of that. I have a copy of it somewhere in the house. You had to be a part of learning civil disobedience, but I think Michelle Crone was heading that up then. And Jennifer, our infamous bearded juggler, she came through, and I can't get through there. I said, here, take this crystal, it'll make you invisible. And she took that crystal and she went right through there just like they never saw her, and jumped in the fountain and started juggling fire. She said she had to get in the middle of the fountain because these assholes would think she's trying to burn a marble building down otherwise. The cops would stand there and they'd reach out for her like this, you know, like they're reaching for her, and she's just juggling away. They didn't want to get in the water, and then finally they did. While she was doing that, another woman was taking the American flag down. And they handcuffed the flag. I remember they handcuffed the flag to the flag post so nobody could take the flag down. And we were laughing about them handcuffing the flag. But they arrested Jennifer. And then me and Tia and Alessandra got arrested on the side of the building together. And they had the curb like this, and they threw me down to where my head was hanging off the curbs. It's hard to move when half your body's laying in that position. I was the only one they did that to. They didn't do it to T or Alessandra, but they threw my butt right down like that. Alessandra kept saying, "Are you all right? You're right." I was like, "Oh yeah." We had our little squish sandwiches on us because we all know to bring something to eat. So they finally put us on the buses, and then they photographed you then, and then they would match you up to your photographs later. Of course, we would they had a gymnasium they took us to. We all got to go pee, and we found some of the girls there, and we slipped them into our line and got them with us. We stole photographs and paperwork everywhere we saw it and mixed it up somewhere else so they didn't know what was going on, or threw it out. Yeah, one person figured out how to undo the plastic handcuffs and got us all loose. So we're sitting there eating our lunch, and the deputy comes in and she sees us eating lunch and she says, "I don't even want to know," and turns around and walks back out. So, and I remember we all got thrown in this one cell, and they hadn't give us anything to eat, and then they gave us bologna sandwiches. The vegetarians went ballistic after that. There's nothing we need. Man, we whooped in bologna sandwich. I ate mine, I know that. But we didn't have enough beds. We were laying on the floor. And then they threw us in a cell of about 30 of us in a 9x6 cell. There was no way to... And by then, the women are freaking because they can only not eating, not used to it. They've never done this before, and it starts getting on them, and that's when everybody gets a little pissy with each other. So we had to try to deflect all that from going on. And there's a lot of confusion, you know, about what to say in court and what was going on, because there were over 600 of us arrested. That was a great demonstration. It was an excellent one, for sure. I don't know where I went after that. Oh, I came back out. I had an old Stone house at the time. Me, young S&M'er, love her to death. She was the one who picked me up when I got out of jail. She met me and brought me back to Virginia. Merry Christmas called me, actually. Was that last year or year before? Year before. Yeah, Merry Christmas called me and told me what was going on, and then I tracked Estelle, was talking to Estelle about it. And oh yeah, I was really pissed. Because how could all of this, the tax bill go to this address for 25 years and then all of a sudden not go to this address? And then the next thing you know, they run it in the newspaper, the land's for sale. And of course a guy is going to get it that hates us. You know, I mean, that was a total rip-off. That was a planned thing. They knew what they were doing. They've been wanting to get that land from us for many years. And they finally did. When I first went there, the first thing they tell you is the land really needs healing. It's very hard and it was bumpy and you had to be really careful. And I watched that land, I think, really change and heal a lot with the women that were being on there and doing the different things, planting different things that were there and growing different foods or whatever. The wildlife that was coming around. They knew that we cared, you know, about the land. Learned about your grandkids learning about herbs that were growing wild there. I remember the kids coming on and that being fun. We did a lot. It seemed like there was a lot of ritual going on, especially on weekends when everybody came out. There was always a fire, campfire, and everybody sprawled out around that. Yeah, because I was part of Spiral Grove, my spiritual community, before I even went up to the peace camp. So Spiral Grove's a church, an interpath church of nature spirituality. That's what we're calling ourselves now. We've been going on for over 20 years, I guess. Our newsletter, our Witches Fair is coming up for the 11th year. And the newsletter's been going out for a good 17 years, I guess. So we must be doing something right. I've always tried to, I guess I've always tied in my political, spiritual self. There's no separation from it, especially when it comes to defending land. And I felt like that's what the peace camp did. They were defending the land from the terrorist Seneca army base. I think now if we were trying to do that, Homeland Security would make us disappear so quick it ain't even funny. We were talking about that this morning, that it would be even more dangerous now to try to do stuff. We've heard stories of some of the women that have been traveling and trying to get just on a plane, and their name would red flag, and they got picked up and was detained for months at a time for, you know, not even any probable cause, just because. That part of it is a little scary, but I don't think it would made any of us do anything any different, really. I think we would still do what we had to do. You know, there were just some of us that believed in what we were doing and was very gutsy about it. You know, and pretty much living at the peace camp, you had to have some guts about it, I think, just for the survival and the zapping and the people around that hated us, but the women's energy that came through there, it always made it better. You know, there was always somebody learned something new or shared something, or for me, I think it was a lot about women getting empowered. You know, when I started digging Herkimers, some of the women from the camp, there was a woman from Australia that came through, and she came to dig Herkimers. I have a zebra stone that she gave me, and she had never used certain tools, and they got to learn how to use hammers and axes and things that they might not have been exposed to before, or shovels, or doing physical work. And so that was a lot that happened at the camp. You know, laying the pipe to the back kitchens. It was already done by the time I got there. So that was a good part of it. And there was a lot of ritual that went on that I remember. Everybody always had some kind of ritual to do. Or let's do this tonight because so-and-so's going over the fence, or let's do this just for the hell of it. And then I guess Otter and Elliot and them, everybody started coming on weekends more than being there all the time, and that's when there might be something planned. We had one woman that was in the military that came to the camp, and she stayed there a while. She was said as soon as the women come on base, they have a meeting right away, and they're told they are not to go to the peace camp ever to see them. Well, somebody told me that. Guess where the first place I'd be? I'd have to go check it out. But this woman, she came, and I think she stayed there for quite a while, if I remember.
Remember meeting her?
Yeah, she came up when I was there. She came up. I think there's been a few women from the military that came through there, from what I heard, whether they stayed or not. And you never know whether are they like the man, the informers coming in to find out, you know, what we're doing. So if we knew somebody like that was around, there may be some paperwork that might have been hid or not out until we really got to know this person. There was a few times that we felt like there was somebody that was there on their side more than our side. It's just a vibe you get about the person. After a while, when you do that work for so long, it's a vibe you get where you can just about tell when there's an infiltrator coming in, you know, or you think. But you want to be really sure when you start accusing somebody of being, you know, an infiltrator there, because on it. that there were definitely women that were there for other reasons and support, that they were there on the man's side to get information, to see what we knew about the buildings, you know, or anything they could find out, to even, you know where people lived so they could even go to zap them. There were lots of women in different other states that we were hearing stories of that were being zapped. They knew they were being zapped. And at that time, and I remember Woody Blue and them talking about they wanted to do blood work from us. They wanted blood work from us. The military did. And we were like, well, if y'all are not doing anything, why would you want blood work from us? It was sad when we started having to tell women about all the zapping and to watch if they were childbearing or their kids coming on or whatever. So there definitely was less women coming on the land because of the zapping. But then there were those of us, I guess we got addicted to it and couldn't leave. Yeah, the fun part's when we started doing Herkimers and all the Peace Camp girls started coming to dig Herkimers too and then bringing them back to the camp. We were trying to learn to program crystals to deflect zapping, see if that would work, or different things like that, different stones that may help, or anything we could to make it easier to be on land. Because sometimes it got pretty intense with zapping. It just seemed like your energy was getting sucked out of you sometimes. It takes a lot of energy to keep going through that. Day after day after day after day.
Well.
Oh, I know one. We come home late at night when I guess me and Zen, it must have been in Ithaca or something. And there was a cat that lived there.
Oh, a feral cat?
It was the cat that would come in when you walk in the door and they would put cat food down there. And Z comes out there and she's reaching down and she's petting this cat, and then she realizes she's petting the damn skunk. Lucky it didn't go off or nothing there, but she come running in the house. She was out there petting the skunk and thought it was this cat.
It was so happy to be petted, it wasn't going to do it.
It was eating the cat's food. It didn't smell like, it didn't go off on her, so she was lucky about that. She'd come running in there. I'm petting that damn skunk out there. It's eating the cat food. So we had to figure out how to keep the skunk from getting into the house. Because of that little hallway in there, we figured out how to get in there. I don't remember what we did, but he didn't pet the cat very much after that.
Right.
Yeah, I just remember there were really good times there, meeting a lot of great women that came through and the kids. All the hard work that everyone did. And how we kept it going, even through disagreements or political differences, the work still got done. And it always will continue to be done on one level or another by us, I think. Even if it's done through just prayer, praying for peace or whatever that's going on. And now y'all traveling around doing what you're doing, it's still going on. The legacy continues. And I feel really grateful for having met everybody, and made such a big family, because I consider everybody that as my family. When you can't be at war every day with the military without it becoming like your family, somebody covering your back. Still do political work around here. I don't get arrested anymore. I can't be drug around anymore because of arthritis stuff, but I don't feel like I have to anymore. Do it on a different level now. But it's always a good day to die,